Hello, everybody. Great to see you. Great to be here. I am just going to give everyone a few minutes. Everyone's still hopping on. We're going to get stuck into some stuff in a few minutes. Excited to be here. Excited to be sharing. If you're around, just give us a wave in the comments and say hi. Tell me how your day's been. What are some great things that happened to you today? What are some of the things you're grateful for? I'm going to admit, this is my first Facebook Live. I've done a lot of Zoom, like most of you, but I've never done Facebook Live. So here we go. We are getting straight into it. I did do a little test with myself before, but there was no one in, so I couldn't see if there's any comments or anything, but I'm just hoping that this is working, and that there's people out there in the world. Just get started in a few minutes, so. All right. Give me a wave if you're there. Welcome to my house. All the children are out the back, so I think we'll be undisturbed for the next 30-40 minutes, which is great. All right. It's fascinating, isn't it, how everything's shifted in the last little while. I'm a speaker, like I'm used to speaking in front of people. I love it. You get a lot of energy from it. Really enjoy it, and now all of our communication and speaking is right here to screens. Not quite knowing if it's going well and if there's anybody out there or not, but we're going to dive straight into it anyway. See what happens. I'm fine with that. So most of you probably don't know who I am. My name's John. I've been part of the group for a little while now, and what an amazing concept. And the guys at Happiness Co, you guys, Julian and Robbie and all the team, I don't know really any of you very well, but this whole idea of gathering a community of people around gratitude, around concepts like joy and happiness, where we can encourage each other, where we can draw from each other, especially in a time of such chaos and craziness, it's remarkable. I've even when I haven't poured an enormous amount into typing up things and stuff, I've received a lot from it, and so I hope for the next little while tonight that I'll be able to just share some of my own experiences, some of my own life, and one of the things I want to talk about particularly is the idea of freedom. This is some of the things I've been learning over the last probably 10, 15 years. But even before that, some of this stuff started to kind of emerge in my thinking when I was a young kid. I'm going to admit straight off the bat, and when I got handed a set of like really cheesy American motivational tapes when I think I was like 11 or 12, and it really did an enormous amount to kind of form me and shape me. In terms of how I think and how I approach the world, the impact that I can make, and the control that I have over the way that I invest in myself and the way that I think about myself, and how I translate the thoughts that go into my brain into how they sit down in my heart and my soul. It's extraordinary when you begin to think that you have control, power over how you interpret what people say to you and how you navigate yourself through life. And so that, when we talk about freedom, which I'm going to jump into again, if you're out there in the world, just give us a wave. Let me know how you're doing. Pop a comment in the comments section so I can see who you are and whether you're there, and we'll get started together. So, like I said, I want to talk about freedom because I've been fascinated with the concept of freedom for a long time. It's something we all desire. It's something we're all working for. We all want to be freer. But I wonder what that means. So that's my first question to you. If you can whack it in the comments, what does freedom mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? It's an interesting question. And when I start thinking about freedom and I start talking about freedom, a lot of people say, oh, freedom is more autonomy, right? Freedom is, freedom is our ability to be cast off all of our restrictions, to kind of shed all of the things that hold us back. And a lot of people kind of live under this sense that to attain freedom, to be truly free, we have to shed all of the rules and all the restrictions and all of the responsibilities in our life. That's how we're going to be free. We become islands. It's just me on my own, free from all of this, and then finally, I'll be the master of my own destiny, and I'll experience true and profound happiness, true and profound freedom. We equate freedom with happiness, don't we? But I think this is a myth, and that's one of the things I want to kind of just get stuck into straight away. Hey guys, hey Jody, how are you? Good evening. I hope you're doing well. I introduced myself before. I'm just not sure if it came through, if it went live at the right time. So we're just going hard for it. We're just going to get stuck into it now. So what I want to say, the first up is freedom. The concept of freedom is not an absence of rules and responsibilities, but freedom is about embracing connection with ourselves and connection with the people around us. How do you interpret freedom? How do you see freedom? We can spend our lives cultivating wealth, working towards certain positions, certain career goals, getting the right house, the family, the job, the things that we really chase after. But oftentimes, even when we've attained all of those things, we still feel a sense of emptiness. We still feel lonely sometimes. And so that's why I think freedom is really important. I've got a quote that I love from a guy called Stephen Pressfield. And he says that the truly free individual is only free to the extent of their own self-mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. I think that's a really fascinating concept. It's something that I've wrestled with my entire life. The concept that we are only free, truly free, to the extent that we can learn to master ourselves, that we can learn to embrace ourselves with all of our quirks, with all of our the good sides and the bad sides, the ups and the downs. If we can truly learn to understand ourselves, then we'll be able to be free. I remember a time in my life when I was really desperate to be free. I think I was about 18. I was living with my parents and I wanted to be free. And so I started learning how to drive. And that feeling when you are learning how to drive, there's an anticipation of when I get this license and I get my car, I'm just going to be home and free. I can go wherever I want, whenever I want. It's ultimate freedom. But the process of actually learning how to drive, I found it really difficult. I had to have these endless tests, and I've actually failed my first driving test as well. Because there's an enormous amount to learn, isn't there, when you are trying to get it done. And then I remember getting it done and being overwhelmed with a sense of freedom. But even when I had this car and I had my license, I noticed that when I'm driving down the road, there's these signs telling me how fast I can drive or which direction I can drive. I get to the traffic lights and green tells me to go and stop tells me to stop, and I have to follow all of the guidelines, and so suddenly it doesn't quite feel free anymore. But it's these restrictions, especially when we're driving, that keep us safe, isn't it? You'd think that we'd be more free if there were less rules, if there was less guidance on how to get around, if we could just do whatever we want. But the reality is that some of the things that exist in life that oftentimes make us feel restricted are actually there to keep us safe and to keep other people safe. And freedom is not about shedding those rules. It's learning to embrace the inner connection that we have with ourselves and with other people. Could you think we'd be more free if there was no rules that guided us on the roads? I think that would be a terrifying existence, to be honest. We wouldn't be free. It'd be chaotic. It'd be chaos everywhere. So moving towards freedom is not about the shedding of rules and responsibilities. This is a false freedom. It's what people think that they want when they want freedom. True freedom comes when we realize that the only real restrictions that are holding us back are the internal ones, the things that we say to ourselves, the voice that is inside of us. And that's what we need to learn to master. And that's what happens if we can learn to face ourselves and embrace the connection we have with ourselves, we'll learn to be able to take control of our life. And I know that there's an enormous amount of things that happen to us throughout the course of our life, an enormous amount. There are difficult things, painful things, traumatic things. There are those of us who live with degrees of pain, mental illness, hopelessness, loneliness, emptiness. These things are real, and they hurt, and they're pervasive. But at the same time, one of the extraordinary things about being human is that we can learn the routines and the rhythms of a life that captures our connection with ourselves and allows us to transform even the most painful experiences of life into something positive. That inner self-talk, Jody, absolutely. That sense of being able to control the narrative inside of my head. And so, for me, when I think about freedom, the hallmarks of false freedom, this kind of, I just want to be free, I just want it to be me, I just want to be completely independent and autonomous. Well, the hallmarks of that kind of freedom are loneliness, emptiness, a sense of being profoundly incomplete. I'm a husband and I'm a father of 3 little kids, and I've got to tell you, I've been a father now for 8 years, and it's hard work, really hard work. It doesn't make me feel particularly free in the sense of I can't do whatever I want to do. But at the same time, if I didn't have the connection that I have with my wife, with my kids, I don't know, there'd be an emptiness, a loneliness there. And I don't think that's freedom. I think that's something else. And so for me, to be truly free is to embrace the connection I have, not just with myself, but with those people in my life who make my life what it is. And that's really a powerful thing. And I don't want you to feel like this is some kind of, this inner self-talk is some kind of state that we get into, a kind of trance. It's like once you've achieved this kind of personal mastery, then you'll be truly free, and that's it for the rest of your life. This is the same thing as everything else in life. It's a journey, it's a process, it's something that we engage in and walk through. It's something that constantly comes up. This is the stuff that I speak about, talk about, and try and practice all the time. And yet every single day I wake up and I have the choice. How is today going to be for me? What's today going to look like? Am I going to be longing for a life that I don't have, or am I going to turn and face myself and the people in my life? And so the question, I've got a few questions to throw out. You can answer them if you like. And question, for this sort of point is, where in your life do you find the deepest sense of connection? Where in your life do you find the deepest sense of connection? If you're there, chuck a comment in, let me know. It can be a place that you feel connected to yourself. It can be a person that you feel deeply connected with. Like I said, for me, a sense of connection comes through family, through being a husband and a father. It's a really profound thing for me. And it's in that space, funnily enough, with all the rules and restrictions and all the things that I must do now because I'm a father. It's in that space that I feel, funnily enough, truly free to be myself and to embrace myself. The second point, so the first point is happiness code. That's awesome. I love it. The second point is, once we're able to embrace connection with ourselves, then we're able to embrace connection with others, and that becomes really important. But the second point I want to make, in this road to kind of personal mastery and experiencing a deep and true sense of freedom, is that we need to find ways to transcend the ego, the self. Because one of the challenges I think for many people, including myself, is that it's very easy to orient our entire lives around our own existence, isn't it? But But if I'm, what I've been saying so far, if freedom is not just about the shedding of restrictions, but the embracing of connections, then at some point we've got to recognize that actually I find myself truly free and truly happy when I am connected to others, the significant people in my life. And in fact, there's been an enormous amount of studies done on social connection and its relation to physical and mental health. In fact, one of the studies that came out of Stanford University, it was a few years ago now, basically showed us that social connection, being close to the people in our life, is better for you mentally and physically than working out or going on a diet or eating healthily, at least to get things started, because it has a profound impact on the way that we kind of inhabit life and work our way through life. So one of the main benefits of learning to face ourselves and embrace ourselves and kind of walk this path of mastery and freedom is that we can then realize that actually to live a substantial life, to live a truly free life, we're able to then turn and face the other people and give of ourselves to them. Some of the most, this is a negative point, but some of the most pathologically destructive people that I know in life are not malicious people or genuinely bad people. They're just people who haven't been able to, or perhaps haven't been courageous enough to deal with their own stuff, their own darkness, whatever you want to call it. And because they haven't been able to deal with it, it kind of spills out onto everybody else. They're not malicious, they're not trying to hurt anybody, but sometimes when we're unable to face ourselves and reckon with ourselves and really deal with the difficult things inside of ourselves, it is enormously difficult to do it for anybody else. And so I think we have a really profound responsibility as human beings to bring healing and wholeness to the world. But we're never going to be able to do it until we've recognized who we are, what challenges we have and how we show up to life and to work and to family and all of those things. Hey Lorna, how are you? We went to high school together and now we live like 10 minutes away. That's incredible. Good to see you. There's a quote from there's a guy called Erwin McManus that I love, and he wrote a book called The Way of the Warrior. And he says this quote, I'm going to read it to you. He uses the analogy of a warrior, so hopefully that's not unsettling for you. But he says that the warrior is not ready for battle until they've come to know peace. For all the wars that have ever been waged from the beginning of time were first born in a person's heart. Now this is a really interesting concept. It's true that there's so much division and pain that exists, but so much of the pain and heartache that exists externally in the world was first born in here. Have you ever had a moment in your life where there was so much angst inside, there's so much pain inside, that it just kind of spills over, and you begin to create an environment that is a projection or reflective of the pain that you experience? That's what we're trying to transcend, isn't it? That's what we're always trying to grow through and evolve out of. And there's a book that I read by a guy called David Brooks. It's called The Second Mountain. And it's an absolutely fascinating a book, a really interesting concept. And he talks about life through the lens of these two mountains. So mountain one is what he calls the mountain of ego. This is about what I can accomplish, who I can be, who you're going to recognize me to be, how the world's gonna see me. Okay, this is all about the ego. This is where we build careers, we build a reputation, we build a brand, we build a name for ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with all of those things. Like I'm a big advocate for it. Like, build the life that you want to live, inhabit it, go full throttle into it. But at the same time, what we have to recognize is that these things in and of themselves, they're not going to satisfy us. They're not going to quench the thirst that we have for meaning and for purpose. And he called this, but the second mountain that he says is it's when we begin to realize that life is more than just about us, that life is actually about others, and about what we can give to others. And there's a fascinating story. He recalls the story of a janitor who works in a hospital, and he cleans the rooms every day. And one of the rooms that he cleans, there's a coma patient, and this is a true story. There's a coma patient who's a young man who's been in there for about 6 months, and the dad's been in there for every day for 6 months, visiting his son, making sure everything's tended to. And every day, the cleaner comes in, cleans the room, they have a little bit of an exchange with the father, and then he moves on to the next room. And one day, he notices that Father isn't in there when he's cleaning the room. And so he cleans the room anyway, moves on, and then he steps outside, and the dad's just stepped out to have a bit of a smoke. But then the father turns around to the janitor and starts chastising him, starts telling him off, because you haven't cleaned my son's room today. And in a moment like that, you've got a choice to make about what kind of person you're going to be. And in the book, David Brooks, he talks about first mountain and second mountain responses. The first mountain response is, I cleaned the room. You just didn't see it because you were out here, right? It's a fairly normal response, fairly instinctive response. To be perfectly honest, it's probably the response that I would give. Like, of course I did, you just didn't see it. Second mountain response, however, is when we realize that this is not about me, that there's someone else here, and actually the person in front of me is hurting and in need of a lot more compassion than maybe I've given them. And so I've got another little quote to read here. He says, the first mountain response is to see your job in this context as the cleaner. I clean rooms. And you would say, I did clean your son's room. It was just that you were out smoking. The second mountain response is to see your job as serving patients and their families. And it's to meet their needs in a time of crisis. And that response says that this man needs comfort. I'll go and clean the room again. And that's exactly what he did. He went in and he cleaned the room again because he realized that this wasn't just about him. That he wasn't going to win any battles by saying, yeah, I cleaned the room. What are you going to do? That actually his role here was for somebody else. And you can't respond like that if you're constantly trying to prove or assert yourself. If you're constantly trying to build your own sense of ego and self. And what did you call it? Ego, the biggest bully or the biggest cheerleader? Absolutely. Absolutely. But when we lean into life purely with our ego, it is so difficult. It is so difficult to recognize and empathize with the pain and the struggle and the needs of other people. And this is one of the most sort of powerfully shaping metaphors that I guess I've really locked onto and gone, this is something I want to be like. I want to be a second mountain kind of guy. And so we have to realize that freedom is a gift, not just to us, but to other people. And our life is a choice about how we're going to interact. How, is it just going to be about me, or is it going to be about others? And I guess there's a way to determine whether you're ultimately free by asking, where is your ultimate appeal? Like, what's your ultimate goal in life? If you're trying to figure out, okay, so am I a first mountain or a second mountain person? If the focus of our lives is on the self, if it's on me, and that doesn't mean to say that the focus of our life is on me. I'm not talking about self-care. I'm not talking about the need to focus on who we are and how we show up in the world. I'm talking about building a life around my needs without ever embracing connection with others. And if that's how we build our life, we're kind of destined to be bound to a life of complete inner chaos. But if our appeal is to the other, to serve, to love, to bring life to others, then we've truly come to a place of personal mastery because we've been able to transcend our egos. We've been able to lift ourselves above what we've previously been dispositioned to. So, first point, embrace connection. Second point, transcend ego. And the question at the end of this section is, what's your ultimate focus? Is it the first mountain or the second mountain? Now, don't put this in the comments. This is for you. This is a reflective question. To what is my ultimate appeal? Like, what is my ultimate goal in life? Is it to build my life? And who cares what the cost is? Or is it to give to the other? And this is really fascinating because when we think about freedom, when we talk about freedom, so many people just think, this is about me. I want to be free. But to be truly free, you must live postured towards the other, to the world, to give and pour love into the world and just watch what happens. It's one of the reasons I think this group is so absolutely remarkable, because it's simply focused around pouring love, joy, gratitude and happiness into the world in a powerful and life-shaping way. What an incredible gift. What an incredible gift. So I've got 4 points. Embrace connection, transcend ego. The third one is do the work. do the work. A very common thing that we say these days. And this one's about resistance. Because once we've reckoned with ourselves, we've embraced ourselves, we've realized that life is more than me, it's about the other people, then we can get to work building life, building the life that we want, and the life that we feel called to, the life that we feel is ours for the taking in a positive way. And once we've been able to face ourselves honestly and step into the kind of freedom that comes through serving the world, we can look at the future and go, okay, so what's this going to look like for me? What's this going to look like for me? I learned something very important very early in life. I learned that the future, what comes tomorrow, is not a passive reality. It's not something that just happens to me. That I have agency, that I actually have the power to step into my life. We are active participants in the future, which means that we have the responsibility to create the kind of future that we long for. This is what I spend most of my time talking to people about. Is helping them to understand that the future is not something that just happens to you, that you have a role to play in the cultivation and the creation of the future. And this isn't just about, look at the house you want, dream it in your mind's eye, and eventually it'll be yours. It's so much more than that. The posturing ourselves towards the future is intuitively about recognizing that we have a powerful role to play in the shaping of the story that we're living out. And I think that's pretty incredible. But have you ever noticed that the moment you begin to step into your life in a powerful, meaningful, and kind of life-shaping way, there are an enormous amount of things that just stop you and push up against you? You ever had that? Give me a thumbs up in the comments if you've experienced that kind of resistance. You're like, I need to get this thing done. You decide, okay, tomorrow I'm going for a run. I haven't been for a run in 10 years, but tomorrow I'm going for a run. And you wake up and you feel more tired than you've ever felt before. This kind of resistance comes flooding in. It's a really fascinating thing about the world that we live in and the kind of the inner lives of each of us is that when we make a conscious decision to take ourselves on, to grow, to develop, resistance comes in droves and presses against us. Stephen Pressfield, who I quoted a little while ago, he's a fascinating character. And he's got a quote in one of his books. The book is called The War of Art. And he says, are you the writer who doesn't write, or the painter who doesn't paint, or the entrepreneur who never starts a new venture? If so, then you have known what resistance truly is. Now, Stephen Pressfield's a novelist, and he's familiar with the kind of long-form projects that so many of us aspire to. I mean, how many of you have ever wanted to, Other Resistance, Lost Friends, There's so many things in life that act as resistance against us, aren't there? So many things. Even some positive things. I mean, if any of you are studying at university or doing any of that stuff, when you sit down to do an assignment and you suddenly get this uncanny and overwhelming urge to clean all the house, and you're like, oh, that's a good thing, I haven't cleaned the house for 20 years, I'll do it today. But it's resistance trying to stop you from achieving the thing that you want to do. And so one of the things that we've got to recognize is that once we've embraced connection, once we've transcended ego, we can step into the work of building the life that we're so desperate for. We're going to have to reckon with this thing called resistance, because resistance steals from us that which enables us to press forward in life and achieve the things we need to. And it's funny just how powerful it can be. And a general rule of thumb with resistance is that the more important something is to you, the greater the resistance will be. If there's something that you've always wanted to do and you're finally taking the plunge and getting to it, the resistance that you experience in that moment will be absolutely profound. We've all done that instead of uni work, absolutely. I do that instead of actual work. Or I'm working on a project that I'm like, there's a deadline coming up, I've got to get this project finished, and suddenly I'm more productive in every other arena of life, just not the one that I really need to. But on a serious note, it's really interesting to me how many people I've spoken to over the years who've had powerful experiences where they've come close to death or close to losing themselves or someone else that was really close to them. A battle with a terminal illness, or an accident that caused great injury, or there's a number of things which cause people to stop and take stock of their lives. Maybe you've experienced the same thing. And it's in these moments that people often reevaluate everything and say, I need to live differently. I need to be different. I need to take things seriously, because it's in those moments when you realize there are more important things than what I'm doing. And I wonder, why does it take these kind of events for us to actually take resistance on and start pushing into that life that we want? Why does it take something so catastrophic or cataclysmic? You know, the beauty of being human is that we can make that choice today. We can choose today that the things which are important to me, which have never been urgent, which have always been on the back burner, I'm going to step into those today. I'm not going to let it take something wrenching and something painful and something cataclysmic for me to step into the life that I've always wanted to live. I'm going to take it on today and recognize that it's going to be a really hard challenge. There's a few times in life when I've had kind of these choices. What am I going to do? What kind of person am I going to be? One of them was a fair while ago now. I was working as a sales manager at a department store. I didn't mind the job. It wasn't particularly fulfilling. And we decided, we found out that we were going to have our first child. And I realized that when you have children, you need to, make money and provide, and want to buy a house and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to be trapped here forever. Like, if I stay in this job, which wasn't bad, but was not the job that I wanted, I'm going to be trapped. And so we found out that that we were going to have a baby, and I decided to quit my job and go back to study. Stupid decision is what most people told me. Stupid decision. Don't you need to support your family? Don't you need to pay for X, Y, and Z? And I thought, hang on. It is a stupid decision on so many levels. But at the same time, it's not. Because I'm making a choice to step into the life that I really want to live. Another time this happened in life, it happened actually fairly recently, at the beginning of this year. For a long time I've wanted to start my own business and work for myself and do some of the projects that I've always wanted to do, but I've never been able to do because I've worked for other people, and I've loved working for other people in life. It's been great. But at the beginning of this year I had the opportunity to basically step out and start something for myself. And now I have a house, 3 kids, big life, etc. And I'm like, okay, so am I going to actually be courageous enough to step out and do the thing that I've wanted to do for a very long time? Or am I going to be sensible, maybe, respectable, maybe? And for some people, the right decision is to be sensible and respectable, perhaps. But for me, I recognize that there's never going to be a great time to do what I desperately want to do in life. And it was just resistance pushing against me, telling me that there was always a good reason to stay put, to stay where you are, and to not move. But the problem with staying put is after a while you start to feel stale, stagnant, bored, lonely, empty. Those things all come flooding in, don't they? You don't have to do anything for those feelings to be there. And so we decided as a family, we're going to do this. We're going to step into this life. And we have. And it's been, I tell you what, great time to start a business just before a global pandemic. Really fun. But at the same time, every day I wake up and ask myself, am I doing what I love? Am I happy? And the answers are yes. Yes, yes, yes. Why? Because there's more to life than climbing a career ladder. There's more to life than making stacks of money. Life is about showing up for ourselves, embracing connection with others, being able to transcend ego and pushing through the barriers of resistance that constantly try and pull us back. And so, resistance is just part of this internal quest to master ourselves and to experience freedom. If we're going to live truly free lives, not only do we need to embrace connection, not only do we need to transcend the ego, but we need to be committed to doing the work that enables us to overcome resistance. So for you, where in your life do you experience the greatest level of resistance? I mean, this is a reflective question that helps you to kind of evaluate, right, so the area of my life that I'm experiencing the most pushback, the most resistance, that's the area most likely where I'm invested into emotionally. That's the part of life that means the most to me and is therefore the most challenging and the most difficult. If I could design life differently, I would. I'd make it easier. The things that we love to do would just be easy, but they're not. The things that will define our life in the end take great courage. They require great risk. They often take great sacrifices as well. But at the same time, how would we rather live? Is resistance the same as discipline? No, resistance is the thing which pushes against us and stops us from achieving our goals. I think discipline is how we overcome resistance. So let's take the analogy of, wanting to go for a run in the morning. Okay, so you decide, all right, I want to go for a run. So for me, I like running. And when I run, I know that it makes me feel good. So I get a bit of mental space. It helps me to process big emotions and thoughts. It helps me plan and prepare for the day or unwind for the day at the end of the day. But when I decide to go for a run, I know that it's important. The resistance that comes is, oh, my muscles are aching. Oh, I feel too tired. Oh, I feel a little nauseous. Like it's this sense of like, I don't want to do it because it's hard to run. Discipline is going, I said that I'm going to do it. I know that it's going to be good for me. I'm just going to do it regardless of how I feel. Discipline are the structures that you put into your life that help you to overcome resistance. Resistance is the enemy. It's the thing pushing against us. But I'm glad you said discipline, because discipline is a critical part of actually being able to step into this space of mastery. All the excuses, they're always there. So I got one more point. First 3 points was embrace connection. Second was transcend ego. The third was do the work. And the fourth is create the future. It's the best one, right? It's when we actually get to step into life and go, so what do I want tomorrow to look like? The tagline for my business is, tomorrow awaits our design. And I really mean it. It's one of the kind of life mottos that I live by. Tomorrow awaits our design, which means that tomorrow is not just passive. It's not just going to happen to you. Tomorrow is defined by the way that you decide to show up today and the choices you make today. We have a remarkable capacity to influence the way the future unfolds. Not completely, not in its entirety. There's always going to be a numerable number of things that come in and impact our life. But at the same time, there's a guy called Viktor Frankl, who was a prisoner of war during World War II. He was a psychologist, and one of his famous quotes is all about this last human freedom that we have. And he says, you can take everything from me except that one freedom, that one last thing, and that is my ability to choose how I respond in any given moment. This is true freedom. It's not about what's happening on the outside, anything that comes against you. Freedom is recognizing that I have the capacity, the power, the freedom to choose how I respond to life. Which means that, in a very real sense, tomorrow is in my hands. Maybe not in terms of everything that's going to happen. I can't predict the future. I certainly can't design it on like a computer lab. But what I can do is recognize that no matter what happens tomorrow, I know how I'm going to be and how I'm going to react. And that's one of the most remarkable disciplines that I strive towards and sometimes achieve and sometimes fail, because life is a journey. But this is one of the things that I have essentially surrendered my life to helping other people recognize, is that tomorrow doesn't just happen to you. Tomorrow wants you to be involved in the process of its creation. People often seem, so stuck, so powerless. But like we've mentioned with concepts like religion, resistance and freedom, to a large degree, the things that really hold us back in life are not external or extrinsic factors. They're internal factors, that voice, that memory, that feeling that you're somehow inadequate, somehow less than. And once you get control of that voice, you're able to step in and get into the rhythms of that mastery, a whole new world of possibilities opens up. Because creating the future isn't about, like I said, picking the house you want and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get that house. I'm going to live in that house. It's about recognizing that we move in the directions of our values and our purpose. So if we don't have any values, if we don't have any purpose, we're going nowhere. But to understand the connection we have to the future is that which I value, the purpose that drives my life, is one of the greatest resources that I have, because it enables me to move in that direction. So if your value of yourself is low, then the direction in which you move is low. and it's painful, and this is the cycle people get trapped in. And it's not an easy one to step out of. I recognize that. I know that. But at the same time, if we can be people whose lives are filled with meaning and fueled by purpose, then our life moves in the direction of that purpose, and our future begins to evolve in the direction of that which we want. One of the greatest pieces of advice I got given once was, I think it was by a school teacher when I was in high school. There's a lot of stuff, through my teens that I learned and I just really stuck with. And he said, whether you think you can do it or whether you think you can't do it, you're right. And he said that, and I thought, that's true. It's very true. Whether you think you can do it or whether you think you can't do it, you're right. So my final question is, what kind of life do you want? Not what kind of house do you want, what kind of car do you want to drive, but what kind of life do you want? For me, I want a life defined by freedom, but not the freedom that is the shedding of responsibility, a sort of a longing after autonomy and independence. I want a life of freedom that is filled with deep, powerful, meaningful connections with other people. I want a life of freedom that helps me to transcend my ego, so I realize this is not just about me. It's also about you. And it's about the others in my life and how much I can give, how grateful I can be, and how generous I can be. It's also about recognizing that I have a profound impact on the shape of tomorrow. And that regardless of what comes my way in life, I have the ability, maybe even the responsibility, to choose to see things well and to be well in the midst of that. So I hope this has been helpful, encouraging for some of you. I don't know how many people have been watching, but I think it's stored up on the page. It's an absolute privilege and a pleasure to just be here and to get the opportunity to share. And so if you get a chance, file this away, come back and watch it whenever you can. And I hope that you continue just plugging into this space and being reminded of all the things you're grateful for, all the things that drive you and motivate you and bring you to life. And each morning that it serves as a constant reminder of the fact that you have incredible value, incredible significance, and that tomorrow is in your hands. All right, guys, take care, have a wonderful evening, and I'll catch you soon.